Welcome to Me Time with Mind Escape Vibe, where it is your time to be kind to your mind. My guest today is Lynn Delmastro-Thomson, a certified hypnotist, energy healer, and entrepreneur for the last 13 years. After being misdiagnosed with leukemia at the age of 25, Lynn became passionate about sharing her story, while also believing that chronic disease does not have to be a life sentence. Lynn works with women with chronic health symptoms who want to have more energy and peace of mind. Welcome, Lynn. I'm so glad to have you on. Please introduce yourself to the Me Timers.
Yeah. So thanks, first of all, for having me on the show. I'm Lynn, and I am a certified hypnotist. I'm an energy healer, and I'm just all about helping women feel better in terms of their health journeys. So this is totally my jam to get to share with you a little bit about my journey and about what hypnosis is.
Oh, I'm so excited. I am because I don't know a lot about it. And what I do know I've only seen on TV. So I'll get to hear the real deal.
Yes.
So I always like to start the podcast with asking, what's your mental victory vibe celebration? And that is something that you've done for yourself recently and poured into your cup. So, Lynn, what have you done for yourself lately?
Well, it's the perfect time to ask me that because I just came back yesterday from a 4-day retreat. So I haven't been on a retreat in a while, and it was an amazing experience of just receiving, being and not being in the practitioner or provider seat, but just like sitting there in the audience and actually being poured into.
It's so nice. It's a different feeling when it's on the other side. And you just sit and you really savor and enjoy, right?
It was perfect. And it felt like the whole thing was just constructed beautifully, where there was enough time for, just resting, relaxing. We had a dance party one night, which was super fun.
Ooh, I like it. So what's your personal empowerment theme song?
So I would say Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys. That's definitely
Yes.
one that pumps me up.
Yes, it does. It does. Turn it up on loud and just have a good time. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. So tell us your story. How did you come to learn about the true nature of healing?
Yeah. So my story started in my 20s. I was in graduate school. I was pursuing a PhD in history, and I was about 3 years into that program. So it's the summer of 2004, and I'm scheduled for elective surgery. I was going to have a breast reduction. And so I go through all the process, pre-op blood work. They, do all the markings for the surgery. And the night before surgery, I get a phone call from my surgeon saying, something's wrong with your blood work and I can't do surgery. So it throws me down this rabbit hole because that's all I was told in that moment was something is wrong and I can't do surgery. It was a very sleepless night, and there were a lot of sleepless nights in my journey. And after several weeks and actually two different hospitals, they came up with a diagnosis. And the diagnosis at that time was chronic myelogenous leukemia. So I went from thinking I was just a healthy 25-year-old at the time going in for elective surgery to my whole world being flipped upside down. And as you probably felt when you hear the word leukemia, that was quite a scary diagnosis to receive at the time. So I went back home because I was actually in a hospital in a city where I didn't live by the end of this process. They send me home, and I'm attempting to kind of get back to living life, whatever that looks like, because it felt like I had been in a snow globe shaken up and not really, nothing felt like it was where it was before. I start the medication, the treatment that they say, and over the course of the next year or so, I start getting worse, even though I'm being told that the medication seems to be working from the tests that they're running. So it was very confusing because being told that and then seeing kind of in the mirror how awful I looked. Like I looked like a human skeleton at one point. I had lost an unhealthy amount of weight. I was exhausted. It was hard to just, walk around my small little apartment and, make myself something to eat. That was how far I deteriorated.
Mhm.
And when I would ask the doctors, like, why do you say this is working? And I don't feel like I'm getting better. Like, nobody was listening to me. I was just being, basically, looking back, medically gaslit through this whole experience. Because the doctor too, he would even like say, well, how are you feeling? And I'd say, I feel awful. I feel, X, Y, and Z. And then he'd say, you look great, which was the most bizarre thing to
Mm.
experience when you can look in the mirror and you
Yes,
look at
here.
yourself and you're like, I do not look great. Like, that's not a
Mm.
compliment to somebody when they know that they're ill. And I kept being dismissed, and it actually took 3 years for me to get to see a different specialist, because in my gut, like, there was something niggling at me, like, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't feel right. But they kept saying, no, no, the medication's working, you have this diagnosis, everything from their perspective was good, which was not my lived experience. This was not good. So finally, after 3 years of asking for a referral to a different specialist, and actually in that time period starting to explore other things that weren't just medical treatments, taking a pill, that kind of thing, I finally did get to see a different specialist, and I found out that I had actually been misdiagnosed.
What?
Yeah. Crazy, 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 right? I mean, being told you have leukemia, being treated for that for 3 years, and then nope, turns out like something inside me knew it didn't make sense.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I've done like research of statistics of misdiagnosis, and it's far more common than anybody really realizes. Maybe not with a
It's something as
diagnosis.
severe a cancer,
Right.
neoplasm, like chemotherapy, all these different treatments. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I didn't have like traditional chemotherapy in those 3 years. They gave me this pill, which kind of was like chemo in a pill, and it had a lot of the same nausea, awful side effects as chemo would, but I at least didn't have to go through kind of that. Didn't lose my hair, like those things didn't happen, but it was horrific.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow.
And
Wow.
so it really, it showed me like A, the faults of the medical system, and B, it pushed me in a direction of having to find my own way, because nobody was listening to me. And as I listened to myself, I was like, okay, there's got to be other things I can do to at least like make myself feel some better on a day-to-day basis. Like, that was my first goal, was just not to feel stressed out, anxious, overwhelmed all of the time. So, I started out with things to help my nervous system to heal, to help me with the stress of this experience. And then it kind of took me down a rabbit hole of like trying acupuncture and trying energy healing for the first time. And so for me, all of those things just really showed me, healing didn't come from listening to a doctor. It didn't come from taking a pill that I actually didn't even need. It came from starting to listen to my own body and listen to kind of where I was being guided to try this, try that. What can help me feel better? What can improve my quality of life?
Wow. So does that lead into the cosmic 2x4? The head? When I read that, I was like, I can't wait to hear about that. Like,
Yeah, so I would actually say the cosmic 2x4, and I talk about it more in depth in my book, You Are Not Your Diagnosis. But for me, my cosmic 2x4 was to go back to the beginning of the journey. I had been really miserable in this graduate program for 3 years. So I went to grad school. Looking back, I think I was scared to be what I perceived as a grown up and go out and get a job. And I had always been like an excellent student. So I was like, how can I be a student for as long as humanly possible? Well, go get a PhD in something is usually the answer to that question. So that's what I decided to do. And in those 3 years before I got really sick, my body was kind of like whispering to me with some smaller symptoms of not what I ultimately kind of developed, but I started having a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, migraine headaches, which I had had when I was like a lot younger, and then they had kind of subsided in college. They came back again, Like my body was trying to get my attention to
Mm.
say, are you sure this is your path? Are you sure this is what you want to do with your life? Because you seem really miserable. And I kept making up all of these like stories and excuses to myself about graduate school is supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to be miserable, which who tells themselves that? I did.
Yeah.
You know, we have some crazy belief systems and stuff, which we'll get into, you know, as we talk about hypnosis. But looking back, I'm like, yeah. So I view what happened to me in 2004 as really the cosmic 2x4 up the side of the head, because I wasn't listening to the smaller like taps on my door of like, you might want to change what you're doing because you're starting to make yourself sick. It's like, okay, you didn't listen to, you know, all the knocks on the door. Let's just you'll get a whack up the side of the head and you have no choice but to listen.
So all of that, the misdiagnosis, the doctorate program that just you thought you were feeling, but you just really want your body was like, no way, this is not for us. What in the cracker-knuckle ham sandwich? We got to do something different.
Right.
What did that lead you to becoming a certified hypnotist?
Yeah, it eventually did. So hypnosis is actually kind of the latest thing that I've added to the work that I do. But all of the things that I went through brought me into kind of wanting to help other people. Because once I found out, you know, that I had been misdiagnosed and I had experienced all of these things in the 3 years leading up to knowing that had helped me, I started to think, well, there's other people out there that need help, you know? So I had this calling on my heart as I healed to help other people who were going through their own journey with, you know, chronic illness and crazy things that happened to them. I mean, I've heard crazy stories. I think mine is the craziest, but I've heard some pretty crazy stories of what other people have gone through.
I'm still sitting here in shock. I'm not even going to lie. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
So tell us a little bit about your business. Like, what do you do? What is your what do you do?
Yeah, so I work primarily with women who are dealing with different chronic health conditions. A lot of them have things like autoimmune diseases. And basically, what I do is I help people to, first of all, regulate their nervous system because we can't heal when we're stressed out. Like our bodies are like, don't know how to heal when I'm just all stressed out. And I also help them create the mindset that helps them to heal, because we have to believe ultimately that we can heal, that it's possible, you know. So I help people basically reprogram their minds to believe whatever they want truly deep down to have be their reality, that that's possible.
Wow. 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 I have to get it together. I do. I'm still on the misdiagnosis part. You know, I part of my life is my podcasting is something that I do, but I've spent more than a few decades working in healthcare, starting as a phlebotomist. So
Okay.
it's like I hear things all the time, and I've even been misdiagnosed, but to hear your story and the treatment in 3 years.
Yep. Even though I was questioning, you know, and that's the frustrating part, is I was
Mhm.
questioning for those 3 years. I wasn't just sitting back, you know, looking back on it. I was in my 20s, so I didn't really know how to navigate that. I wasn't as assertive as I would be now in navigating that. Like now I'm just like, I don't take a bunch of crap from people. I'm like, you're going to listen to me. And if you don't listen, like I'm going to walk out that door and I'm not coming back. I'm finding somebody who will listen to me.
And I think that's very important. That's an important message too, because a lot of times when, especially when you're young or wherever you are at whatever stage of your life, you lean on the knowledge of the professional, right? And
Exactly.
you rarely question
Right. And, you know, I
because
mean,
the thought
yeah,
is they have your best interest at heart.
right. Well, and we're programmed, I think, from a young age to think that, you know, yeah, you're sick, you go to a doctor, they know how
Yes,
to help you, which, you know, some cases they do. And unfortunately, as my story shows, sometimes they
they don't.
make mistakes. And then, you know, the story I think also really shows how blinders can be put on, because even
Mhm.
though I was trying to say, this doesn't quite make sense. What's going on? I don't understand why I'm getting worse. And you say the medication is working. It was just like, well, you have this diagnosis. Nobody was willing to take a step back and go, she doesn't look like she's getting better. Like the human being before my eyes looks very deathly ill versus, well, a lab test looks good. Like you got to also take into account the person sitting in front of you and what you're observing, not just a lab test.
I agree. I definitely agree. We have to, we hope that the providers, the PCPs, the specialists, the doctors that we go to see do see past what's just on the paper and listen to what we have to say. I do.
Exactly.
I definitely agree with that. It's something that I had to learn, and I'm very vocal about it when I see my PCP. When I walk in here, I feel judged. Are we gonna, I'm just honest with her. And she's like,
Right.
that's not what I meant to do. Let's talk about this. So it's good that she listens because not everyone has that, or
No.
they don't have that type of relationship or start to build that type of relationship with their provider. And they may see them for years, like
Yep.
years.
Yep. Yeah. And sometimes you feel like you don't like that person. They don't feel like, you don't feel comfortable. Like you said, you may feel judged. You may feel like all sorts of things. And yet, how many people just dismiss that, unfortunately, and say, well, they're the doctor. Like, I didn't go to medical school. Like, yeah, but you're the expert in your own human body, like you live in it 24/7. That doctor doesn't come home with you and jump into your body 24/7 and go, oh, yeah, this doesn't feel right. Something feels wrong.
Yes. So when you're working with these women, that mind and body connection, that helps them to be more assertive as well when they are visiting with their doctors,
Yes.
or any other aspect of their life. It helps them to stand in a form of acceptance and move forward.
Yeah, and I would say, understanding. I mean, there's for so many years, I think we treated people like there was a divider, at our neck, right? That our brain was one thing and our body
Mhm.
was something else, and then kind of the brain has always been more valued, like the cognitive aspects of things. And yet your body has a lot of information, a lot of wisdom. And so I also love to help people understand there's a dialogue going on constantly between the body and the brain and the mind and the body. And it goes two ways. And whatever the body shares is just as valuable, like your body knows. You may think certain things, but actually, if you quiet yourself and you listen to your body,
Yeah.
if you may actually have a different experience than what you're having in your head.
I love it. And you're referring to cognitive flexibility. And walking in that awareness, self-awareness is key, but it also induces cognitive flexibility so
Right.
that we can reframe those thoughts.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Our brains are definitely, I think for many years it was thought, oh, your brain is very set in its wiring. And I love
Mhm.
all of the research of,
Yeah.
recent years that really shows now like your brain is constantly able to change and develop, whether that's for the better or the worse. You get to kind of choose some of that by what you choose to do.
I agree. The evidence-based medicine and the research is really showing a difference in cognitive function and what the brain does and what it can do to change. You're absolutely right. I can remember many years ago, I'm not going to say the year, being in anatomy and physiology, and we talked about the nervous system, and they talked about, well, what's there is that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
Exactly, exactly. There was no idea that there's all, the talk of neuroplasticity and how our brains
Yes.
can change and rewire. And it's so cool to live in the time where we're coming to understand that. And I think some people maybe just intuitively got that before, but now science is actually showing
Science
that's the truth.
is showing it too. I love that. I love science. So I'm a science nut. I always have been, and I own it because I love
Nice.
science. Why do you believe working with the subconscious mind is so important to support change and healing?
Yeah, so our subconscious mind is actually in charge of things 95% of the time. So we think that we're running around making conscious choices all the time. I choose to eat that. I choose this behavior. I choose whatever. And it's actually our subconscious mind that's driving the car 95% of the time. And your subconscious mind was developed, all of the programs there, or most of them, were in the first 7 years when you were growing up. So your inner 5-year-old is like in charge of your life most of the time, but you don't realize that, right?
Some folks gonna listen to this and say, "My inner 5-year-old. No wonder I'm doing what I'm doing."
I think sometimes this can be like that light bulb of like, oh, no wonder I'm so like upset about this, because probably my 5-year-old self would get really upset about this, or there's very kind of immature ideas that we developed at that age. And, so that's basically kind of like the program or the tape, or, I use different analogies to talk about what gets created in those first 7 years. So you have like, back to the old school cassette tapes. It's like the tape playing over and over in your brain. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I can't do this. I'm bad at math. Like all of the things that you learned from your parents, from your teachers in those years, from other adults in your life, even your peers potentially, like that is kind of set in. And then that's the tape that's just playing around and around in your brain. And so we think, a lot of work that people try to do to change their lives, we think we can do it with our conscious mind. We think we can talk about our problems, like go to therapy and talk about what happened. But if you don't change it at the subconscious level, that tape is still playing in the background.
Mm-hmm. Now, what would you say to the young ones who don't really understand what a cassette tape is? I'm right here with you.
So it could be, people don't even use CDs anymore, but it could be like some audio file that's on a loop, right?
Right.
It's just playing over and over again. You like a song on your phone and you play it like nonstop on that the thing with the arrows that goes round and round. So it just plays it nonstop, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will have some young ones Googling cassette tape.
Go back to the like the 80s and before
Yes.
then, and you'll know what some of us are talking about when we talk about cassette tapes.
So it's our inner 5-year-olds making a lot of the decisions. So inner child work is really important.
It really is. Yeah. Because if you don't heal all of those things, and also if you don't address kind of what happened and what was created, most beliefs come back to a couple core things, like I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this. Like if you trace things down far enough, which is one of the things that sometimes I'll do when I'm working one-on-one with clients, is to try to get to the root of something that they're dealing with. And that's usually where it all narrows down to those things. Or I'm not safe. That's another huge one. Like if you don't feel safe in the world, that's a pretty biggie.
It is a big one. It is. So what is hypnosis like? So when you're doing that work and the inner child work, or you're getting down to that root, are you also incorporating hypnosis?
Yeah. So kind of when I work with people, there's two parts to the session, really. There's the part where we're talking, where we're kind of engaging with the conscious mind and we're having a conversation. And I ask a lot of questions like, well, why don't you think you can have this thing that you want? Like, why don't you think you can get better? That might be a question. And we'll spend a lot of time, 15 minutes kind of digging around in their brain. What are all the reasons that they think they can't get better? I'll help them dig deeper. And then we go into the hypnosis portion of the session. Well, we actually do some creating of new beliefs before we transition into hypnosis. So perhaps maybe they finally figured out, okay, I don't think I'm worthy of feeling better because maybe I did something in my past that was awful. Mm-hmm. So maybe they don't realize that consciously, but we figured that out now. And so we create some new beliefs that we'll be using in hypnosis and in other ways to support them. So maybe they want to say, yeah, I believe that I am worthy of getting better. So we create a list of beliefs and then we shift into doing hypnosis. And kind of to allay some of the myths and the stuff about what hypnosis looks like. It's not mind control. It's not like what you saw on a TV show or in a movie. Like, you're never going to bark like a dog or,
How
do
did you
silly
know that
things.
popped in my head? When I booked you for the podcast, I was so excited, and I text my sisters. I'm like, I had a hypnotist. It's gonna be great. And my sister said, "You mean she's not gonna make me bark like a dog, is she?" So it
No.
popped in my head as soon as you said that.
Yes, exactly. So most people, before I trained in hypnosis, before I experienced hypnosis, I had that idea too, because we've seen it in TV shows and
Mhm.
movies, or we go to an event and somebody does that live, and that's called stage hypnosis. So it's meant for entertainment purposes. The type of hypnosis that I do and that many people that I know and trained with do, it's about transformation. It's about deep healing work. So why would I make you bark like a dog? It serves no purpose. I don't particularly think that that's cool or funny to do to somebody. I would never do that. So my purpose in doing hypnosis is really to help somebody change what their brains are doing, what they're thinking. So
Wow.
yeah. So we use a lot of exercises in the beginning to just guide you into relaxation. And the other thing I always like to say is, you choose how deeply relaxed you become. And I like to use that idea of it's just you're becoming relaxed. So some people in their first couple of hypnosis sessions, they may just be kind of mildly relaxed. Like, they're completely aware of what's happening in the room. They don't, leave their bodies, nothing. They'll remember everything that happened in the session. And some people go fairly deep. Like, sometimes you feel very deeply relaxed, and that's just how comfortable usually somebody is. both
So do you
both are
have control
effective.
over the client when they are hypnotized?
No, you never lose control as the client.
Oh,
So you can
okay.
always choose to open your eyes at any time. You can come out of hypnosis at any time. Nobody is, having control over you. You're able to just, be relaxed. And then I also always tell people, like, if I say something in the hypnosis and it doesn't really resonate with you, your brain can choose to reject that. So you can say, yeah, I don't really believe that. And that's fine. I mean, it's not really about me trying to program your mind a certain way. You're choosing through the process that we're working together and to, like, what do you want to believe? That's really what I'm helping people figure out, is what do you want to believe, not what I'm telling you to believe.
Okay, I like that. Can we change the subconscious mind just by talking about things?
It's much harder to change the subconscious mind just by talking about it. So
So could you elaborate on how that will work with hypnosis too? Really curious.
yeah. So when we get into hypnosis and when we get into that state of relaxation and we do the exercises at the beginning, basically what it does is it just kind of moves the conscious mind out of the way. So it's like the conscious mind is kind of sitting on top of the subconscious mind, and we
Mhm.
kind of relax it enough that it just kind of moves out of the way temporarily. And so we can talk directly to your subconscious mind when you're in that state. And it's really based on your brain waves change when you go into hypnosis. When you go into that relaxed state, you are not in the brainwave state when you walk around consciously interacting with your life. You're in a state like kind of like before you go to sleep, basically, is where
Okay.
you're going, where you're just relaxed. You're a little bit suggestible to what's being told to you. But again, to come back to that, like, you can choose still to be like, nope, I don't want to believe that. And that's, you always have that control to reject something.
Wow. So in that process, is that the start of the inner child work? I know you said that you mentioned early on that you do a lot of that conversation prior to. And does that help guide that inner child work once they're in that comfortable state?
Yeah, I mean, the whole conversation that we have, both from, when we start working together to, the beginning portion of each session, helps me know the language to use when a person is in hypnosis. And there's a couple types of like different types of hypnosis. So there's one where you're just listening, you're listening to me talk to your subconscious mind. And then there are actually types of hypnosis where it's conversational. So once I get someone deeply relaxed, they're still, again, they're conscious, they're aware. So we're able to have a conversation back and forth, but a conversation with that deep part of them, like perhaps the inner child, perhaps, maybe it's a part of them that's sabotaging their ability to change. And we can talk to that part, which I actually really love doing those types of hypnosis because I find them really powerful for people.
It sounds powerful because just tapping into that subconscious mind and being able to work through that particular limiting belief
Mm-hmm.
is really powerful because you're coming out like, wow, I can't believe
I
that
didn't.
was holding me back all this time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I've witnessed some really powerful things happen when people are able to talk to those parts of themselves that are blocking things. And they wouldn't have accessed that part. You could give someone a journaling exercise, right? And they could write on that question, but because they're not in that deeply relaxed state, they're not kind of in the state where the subconscious is kind of taking over and communicating, the answers might be quite different.
That's very interesting. And I believe that. I believe that. Because when we're able to think about it and control our thoughts and control what we want to say and build a barrier around
Right.
a particular piece that may hurt us deeply or something that we just don't want to think about because we passed that.
Right. Or we feel like maybe someone will judge us for saying,
Yes.
like, I don't believe I can be successful. I don't believe I can heal because, I did something so bad in my past. Like I've seen that with a few people where they kind of felt like maybe they deserved to be sick on some level.
Oh,
And,
wow.
to be able to heal that is so powerful because consciously, I mean, do they really want to keep choosing to believe that they deserve that? Probably not. I mean, most people, unless they really have a hard time seeing their own worth and their own value, I don't think they really want to believe I'm so bad I can't heal, but yet that's holding them back.
I could see that though. I could see that. What are your thoughts on imposter syndrome and hypnosis? Can it help with that? Is that also diving into a deeply rooted limiting
Oh,
belief?
yeah, for sure. I mean, imposter syndrome is again kind of going back to thinking, I'm not good enough in some form, right? We think that, I don't have I'm kind of a house of cards, so to speak. Like there's nothing really inside that merits people thinking that I'm so wonderful as maybe they think I am. I think that I'm just kind of putting on a show. That's all belief. Then that
Right.
probably all goes back to when you were a little kid again. Like
Yeah,
what
I
did
can
you
see that.
learn as, and maybe some of it was told to you and maybe some of it you just from your interactions you're like, oh yeah, I'm not good, I'm not worthy, I'm bad at everything, I'm not smart.
Wow. I could see how changing that makes a difference in healing, whether it's not just the mental and emotional healing, but also the physical healing too, because you're worth it. You feel at that point, I'm worth it.
Yep, I'm worthy of feeling good, I'm worthy of
Mm,
feeling healthy. Sometimes it can get, it can heal when people have habits that are really not helping them get better, like
mhm,
eating things that they know they're like consciously they're like, yeah, I shouldn't eat this because I know those things are not good for me, yet I find myself eating them all the time.
mhm.
Again, that can just be, a form of self-sabotage in a way, like or not feeling worthy of good things in your life.
Wow. This is fascinating.
It really is. I mean, our brains are so fascinating, and when we understand, I mean, when I started to understand it's 95% of the time that's the subconscious driving the show, I was like, "Holy moly, no wonder I do some things that I have done for years." It's my
Yes.
inner 5-year-old or my inner 6-year-old coming out to play.
It makes sense. I'm sitting here like light bulbs are going off. My brain is shooting off signals that it makes sense.
Yep.
So, could you tell us about like 3 simple steps to stop feeling frustrated with our symptoms and understanding our bodies?
Yeah. So one of the key pieces is actually coming into what we've just been talking about, really to change our mindset about symptoms. This is like a big thing that people have, is that they think that symptoms are just innately bad, right? And they're inconvenient a lot of the time. I mean, nobody wants to feel pain, but at the same time, we don't really understand that our symptoms are communication, that they're messages from our bodies. Our
Mhm.
bodies don't have words. Our bodies can't text us or call us and say, hey, like, stop eating that food because it's really not good for me. It doesn't feel good. You get a stomach ache, maybe, or a headache. So, one of the keys is we need to start to shift how we see our symptoms, and we need to be like, oh, I wonder what my body is actually trying to tell me. What is my body communicating? Versus like the dominant paradigm is usually, take something and make the symptom go
Yeah.
away, right? I have a headache, I'm just going to take an aspirin or a Tylenol
Mhm.
or whatever your medication of
Mhm.
choice is, because I got to get back to my life and I need to
Mhm.
just
I
get back
can't
to
be
it.
inconvenienced right now. I have something to do.
Exactly. And your body is probably saying to you, excuse me, I'm doing a lot for you here. And you could take a moment and you could listen to
Mhm.
me.
Mhm. You can listen to me now, or it can get worse later, and you'll listen then.
Exactly. Exactly. And that goes back to that cosmic 2x4 that I had. I wasn't listening. And the more I didn't listen, the more my body had to get louder and louder until
Mm.
wham. And, you're basically flat on your butt because your body couldn't get your attention before then.
Wow. So just listening. What's another tip for us?
Yeah. So I encourage people, again, change your mindset and then like start to actually get curious about what your
Ooh.
body is saying. What is this symptom telling me? You can start to just have a dialogue with your body. I mean, it doesn't require any like special tools, it doesn't require necessarily anyone to help you in that moment. You could be like, why do I have this headache, body? What are you trying to tell me? And then be quiet in that process. Let your body actually pipe up. And really what you're talking to is partly your intuition in that process of the part of you that knows why you have a headache. And if you do it, if I always like to give this kind of, not a warning, but just kind of a encouragement. If you've never done this before and you do it the first time and you ask the question and you sit there and you get nothing, it's okay. Like, you've never done that before, right? Most people have never sat there and asked the question of their body. So you may have to do it a few times. You may have to do it like daily, because it's like you're building a new relationship with your body, and your body's like, does she really want to hear?
Yeah. She's quiet. She wants me to answer.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. Maybe I can give you the answer, right? But most of the time, people get frustrated at first and they're like, I don't have an answer. I don't know. I just, why don't you tell me really quickly? And so it really requires a practice of like slowing down, being super gentle, being like, maybe you're trying to get an answer from a friend who's a little kind of hesitant to share something with you, and you're like trying to give them that space and also make them feel safe, right?
Mm.
So you want your body to feel safe, to be like, yeah, the reason you keep getting a headache is you're severely dehydrated all the time, or you're eating a food that, I really don't tolerate well, and you keep eating it over and over again. So give
I
your
mean,
body
I
the
tried to tell
space.
you, remember last week? Remember our tummy, it was hurting really bad, and remember you went to lay down?
Yep.
You
Yep,
know,
or
it's
you
different
took
things like
something and
that.
you took something and then you made me be quiet, and
Mhm.
that the analogy I always use, and again, and we have to explain what this is for some younger people, the carnival game of whack-a-mole. So there was this game where, like this little mouse head would like or mole head would like pop up through these holes, and you'd have like this big mallet and you'd be hitting it, to like whack it down. That's what I see sometimes. What we do with our symptoms is we take something and we want it to go away, but then it pops up somewhere else, right? So we had the tummy ache last week, and then nope, I took something to make my stomach quiet down. I laid down and then I got back about my day. Now maybe it's a headache, because the body's like, okay, she didn't listen to the stomach ache. Like, how else can I get you to pay attention?
Wow. That is fascinating. That is fascinating. It leads me to this next question, Lynn. What advice would you give your younger self to help cultivate self-trust?
I think the advice I would give is like, remember to trust your body, because I think we come in to this world as little kids and we're super in tune with our bodies, right? I mean, little ones, they know what's going on in their bodies. They're in tune. They're like, I like this food. I don't like that. I want to move this way. And then we get kind of, again, back to the conditioning. It's like, well, you shouldn't do that. Like, that's not good. Don't do that. Like, follow the rules. This is what you should eat. This is how you should act. And we get conditioned out of like listening to our bodies. So I think the advice I would give myself was just never stop listening to your body, because it is amazing and it knows a lot, and listen to it, because it's super wise. And once you learn how to navigate that language, because it really is a different language. It's not the language of words, it's the language of sensation. But once you learn how to keep your intuition going for you, then it makes all the difference in the world.
Wow. Being intuitive, listening to your body. Immediately, I thought about my niece. I'm sitting here thinking about her because she eats like a bird. She is a free spirit. She's only 7, and she's a free spirit. And she was actually sick last week, and my sister and her went to the beach. She had a little fever. She wasn't feeling well. And so we are the olders. Like my younger sister is younger than us, and I have an older sister as well. So we're like, well, I thought she was sick. Is she okay? And her response was, yeah, I still feel a little down, but my body's okay. 7.
Nice. Exactly.
7.
Yeah. And probably, nature is very healing, right? Like being around the water, being around the negative ions that you get at the beach, like all of that stuff. Like, I don't know whose choice it was to go to the beach, but I don't know if she had any say in that. Like, that might have been the medicine she needed.
She said, oh yeah, I still don't feel, but my body is okay. I was like,
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Love it. Love it. I wish we all, held on to that, because I truly do believe that that's, we came into this world that way as little kids. We're like super in tune with what our body's telling us, with our intuition, with so many things. And then we just learn how to like shut those things down. Don't listen to that. Listen to your brain. Your brain is what's important, right?
It's been a pleasure to have you on and to just dive into this part of the subconscious that, to be quite honest, I never really thought about, because I was conditioned to what I saw on television, what I saw for entertainment. And it's been so enlightening. And I truly appreciate the education today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, we got to shed all those myths that keep people from realizing that this is actually just a powerful tool for transformation. It's a lot like meditation. So if you've ever meditated, it's just a little bit different than meditation. So it's not scary. It's not like what you saw on TV.
I love it. I love it. Well, you heard it here first, me timers. You want to check Lynn out. I am going to put all of her information in the show notes. Please go out and check her out. Check out her book, because I learned something today and she helped me a lot. And I hope that you can learn something from her too. And also get any assistance from her if you need to. So thank you, Lynn, for being on. And remember, me timers, this is Me Time with Mind Escape Vibe, where it is your time to be kind to your mind. Have a good day now.